You know, in a place like the Woodsmith shop and the magazine shop, you can judge how popular and how versatile a tool it is by how hard it is to find. And I think a good example of that are these small compact routers.
We have quite a few of them. They're hidden away, and you don't know where they are.
And see, that's exactly what I mean. People find them so useful that they end up hoarding them, hiding them away so that they can find them and use them whenever they want.
They do.
Well, the thing is, they're not intimidating, they're quiet, they're easy to hold. It's just such a pleasure to use them.
Yeah, and you know, I think a lot of people have this sense that these are the laminate trimmers of years ago, where they're, you know, small, half-horse things that don't really have enough power, but that's not true at all.
No.
You know, these new modern palm routers really have plenty of power, and that kind of is what led us into building a little router table for them. They have plenty of power, and they can tackle a lot of the tasks that a full-size router can use or do in a router table.
Mm-hmm. And when you think about it, so many of the tasks that we do with router tables involve fairly small bits, roundovers, small coring bits, straight bits, and so these are perfect for most of the applications we use in a workshop. And so this router table is the perfect size for these routers.
What I like about it going along with those compact routers is, like we mentioned, that low intimidation factor, but there's also a real ease of setup. Mm-hmm. You can get a bit in it and set up and ready to go, and we've done that with this router table too, I think.
Mm-hmm. We have. This is a very fast, easy setup router table. It's fold-up wings, simple fence, easy, quick adjustment for the height of your router bit, so it's very simple to use.
Plus, what I like about it is for a small workshop, this can be an ideal first router or only router table, really.
It can, and it has router storage, router bit storage built into it, which is really great. And really, everything folds up to the size of a full-size router with its case. But here you have a router table with your storage, with your router.
Yeah, but it's not a mini table because I think that the tabletop itself is long enough to be able to tackle even pretty long work pieces without feeling like you're trying to jerry-rig something.
Absolutely.
Well, and then it comes apart, like we talked about, to fold up. So we take the fence off, fold in the wings, and then the table extensions drop down. So it's a pretty compact package. And the fence itself folds up so that you can store the whole fence inside the router table too. So you have bit storage, router storage, all in something that's really not that much bigger than the plastic box your router came in. You know, we had a few goals in mind when we were designing this router table. The first is that we wanted it to be easy to lift and carry. So that means keeping the project as light as possible. However, it still needs to be stout enough to stand up to heavy use. Second, it's better to have a project like this get put to use right away, so we want to minimize the amount of construction time. To tackle some of these issues, we started by using 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood to create strong, lightweight panels. In a few key places, though, we added some hard maple to beef up some parts and to protect some of the edges on the maple. Now, glue and screws tackle most of the joinery on this project. That speeds things along. However, we also wanted to add some rabbets and a few dadoes. These are going to register the parts and speed up the assembly process. The overall result is that in just a couple of easy days in the shop, you go from a pile of plywood parts to a great-looking router table. The plywood case pieces are simply cut to size at the table saw. The hardwood case fronts are joined to the sides with a rabbet cut along one edge. There's another rabbet that's easy to miss at the front of the case. Now, this shallow rabbet here is sized to hold the leaf of a continuous hinge, and that allows the wings to swing out. Then on the back of the case, I cut an oblong opening, and that allows the power cord for the router to pass through. It's a little larger than you might expect, but that way, no matter what position the router is in, the cord isn't going to get stressed. I created the opening by drilling out the ends at the drill press using a Forstner bit. The remaining waste is cut away with a jigsaw. The The ragged edges are then cleaned up with some filing and sanding. Now you can grab the glue bottle and your drill driver and start putting things together. The front and the side are just glued together. But if you do have a nailer, you can speed things along because you don't have to wait for the glue to dry. Once those are put together, these assemblies can be mounted onto the base, and you'll notice that they're set in from the ends of the base. That creates a little bit of a pocket here for the support wings that I'll get to in just a minute. And that leads to one other detail that I want to point out, and that's a notch on the back corner of the base. That's going to house the outer stile on the support wing. The sides, back, and bottom are joined with glue and screws. I just run a bead of glue along the parts. Then set them in place with a clamp and drive screws to lock the parts together. The swinging wings that attach to either side of the case are up next. Now, you don't want to get ahead of yourself when you're building these because they're made in mirror image pairs. So it's a good idea to label your parts and keep things from getting confused. Now, the wings themselves are made up of a pair of stiles joined by a pair of rails and a back piece. Here's what's important though. The outer stile on each wing is longer than the inner stile. And that's because the outer stile acts as a kickstand to prop up the table extensions that Logan is going to make later on. Now, one thing I want to point out also is that the inner stile has a pair of rabbets on it. And both stiles have dadoes cut in them to house the shelves. The compact routers that this router table is designed for only accept 1/4-inch shank bits. So before assembling the wings, you want to drill some holes in the shelves. The dadoes and rabbets in the stiles register the parts for a no-fuss glue-up. Spread glue into the joints and fit the parts together. You could leave them in clamps for about an hour, or you can add some nails to keep the process moving along. All that's left is to attach the wings to the case with some continuous hinges and screws. And with that, the case is complete and it's ready for the top.
We're at the portion of our router table build where we can start working on the top and what will become the work surface of the router table. Generally on a router table, this is going to be a nice solid surface that holds a router plate insert that in turn holds your router. Here, however, we have a 3-piece top, and each of those pieces is built from multiple parts. Now, it sounds a little confusing, but don't worry. Once I show it to you, I think it'll make sense. So let me show you. It starts off with this center section, and this hinges up much like the hood of your car. And that gives you good access to your router to make adjustments and attach it to the router top. Next to that section, we have a pair of T-tracks. Those are going to serve as an attachment point for the fence that Chris is going to make later. Moving a little further out, we have these table extensions. And those are supported by the wings that Phil built when he built the case. And that gives you a nice broad work surface to support all your work pieces. Now, everything here is built out of 2 layers of plywood, so it's going to be nice and stable. And the nice thing is, since they're all nice and square, they're easy to cut with the table saw. So let me go and get this all folded up, and we'll start building the top of our router table. We're going to begin the top of our router table by working on the center section first. But it's important to note that all 3 of these sections are built with layers upon layers. And that holds true with this center section also. It starts with a couple layers of plywood. And these are going to be support blocks that's going to support that middle hinge section. Now, these are simply glued and attached into place with either screws like the plans say, or I'm going to drive a couple pin nails here because honestly, this is shop furniture and the pin nails will hold it perfectly fine while the glue dries. You may want to swing these wings out into their open position. That way you don't accidentally nail those wings shut with these pieces, because then those wings aren't going to work very well. Shoot a couple nails. that held down. Okay, now once that's held down, we're gonna move to the next layer. And that's gonna be using a pair of filler blocks. And what these filler blocks are gonna do is they are gonna span the gap in between our center hinge section and our wing extensions. So those are, again, simply glued into place, then attached with a couple pin nails. Three will be good in that. Then we're gonna move to these two pieces of T-track. Those T-track simply get drilled and screwed into place. With the two edges finished, we can go ahead and start working on the center hinged section. And that starts by cutting a subtop that's gonna fit in between the two support blocks. You can see, into this subtop, I went ahead and cut a large hole. This is sized to fit a router base for the router that I'm gonna be using in this table. Now, that hole's pretty easy to cut over at the drill press, either using a wing cutter or a hole saw. If you use a hole saw, just choose something that's the best fit that you can for your router base. After the subtop's cut, I went ahead and cut a main top. And that main top is just gonna rest in between those pieces of T-channel to give us a nice flat work surface. Now we can just attach these two together. And it starts by putting the subtop in place and applying glue. Then I'm just gonna slide that main top over it and then press those two firmly together. I'm also gonna drive a few pin nails, just hold it together while it glue dries. I am gonna stay away from that center section though, where that hole is. That's because we're gonna be drilling through that for the router bit access and for a couple of mounting screws. I just don't wanna accidentally drill through a few pin nails, so I'm just gonna pin it in the four corners. Then I can go ahead and attach this to the back using a piano hinge on the back side. And then we can go ahead and grab our wing extensions and get working on those. The extension wings of our router table are made out of 2 layers of plywood, like the rest of our top. There is one difference, however. On the back side, along the front edge, there's a groove that I've cut in there. And that's so when those extension wings are attached and they fold down, that groove allows clearance for the knuckle of the hinge that is on the wing assembly. Without that, the extension wouldn't close flat against the case. Once the plywood is glued together and dried and trimmed all the way around so it's nice and flush, you can add some edging. That's simply gonna be a couple strips of thin hardwood that get glued and pin nailed into place. And then any extra can get trimmed off with a handsaw. All right. Once you have that edging all applied and sanded smooth, then it's a simple matter of flipping this case upside down and attaching each wing with a piano hinge. While you're here, you might as well go ahead and attach the front edging also. It's just important to remember that that front edging is going to be 3 pieces. A piece for each of the ends in those support blocks. And then there's going to be a piece that covers the center hinge portion. Let me go ahead and flip this over. We'll get these wings attached. So now that the two extension wings have been attached to the router table, there's really only one thing left to do before you can go ahead and start building the fence. And that's going to be to mark the middle section on where your router base is going to go. Let me show you how I'm going to do that. Really, marking the router base location is pretty simple. I'm just going to use that router base that I used to size my hole. I'm going to drop it in place. Then it's a simple matter of scribing around where the router bit's going to go and the 4 mounting holes that I'm going to use. Then I can use a Forstner bit to remove the waste from that router bit hole. And then I'll drill through those mounting hole locations and then counterbore them from the top side. Then you're ready to go ahead and start making your fence.
The last step in building our router table is going to be building the fence. This fence couldn't be easier. 4 parts, that's it. We have a fence base, a fence face, and then 2 wings. The fence face and the fence base both share a cutout, and this cutout is made by drilling a hole with either a Forstner bit or a hole saw, and then I can nibble out the spur that's left with the bandsaw, clean things up with a drum sander. Now, this fence base is going to have a heavy chamfer applied along this edge, and I'm actually going to do that here at the router table that we're building. So the router table is going to help build its own fence. With that done, there's a couple holes to drill. The fence base receives these 2 holes so that flange bolts can secure it to the T-track that we've already put in the router top. The fence face also receives 2 holes, and these will accommodate flange bolts as well that will hold the wings in place. Now, these wings are very simple. All you need to do is make a plow cut to accommodate the T-track. The T-track needs to be below the surface of the face. So make it a good 64th, 32nd. And the reason that's important is that when we go to clamp our face onto this fence face, I want it to be secure and not to rock and move around. And so the T-track has to be below this face. Well, with the fence built, we've pretty much wrapped up our router table. Now it's time for you to put a couple coats of your favorite finish on. And with that, you'll have a versatile, full-featured router table that takes only a tiny amount of space. And to me, that's a winner for any shop.
Woodsmithplans.com. Hundreds of professional, high-quality woodworking plans right at your fingertips. Every single plan is presented as an easy-to-download digital package that includes pages of step-by-step instructions, full-color photos, illustrations, and exploded views, retail sources for hardware and supplies, plus a cutting diagram and materials list. Many plans offer handy video overviews and guides. Plus, we're proud to offer our plans in both standard and metric. Everything is here, from gorgeous heirloom furniture projects to handy shop projects and upgrades, clever, cost-effective storage solutions, as well as weekend projects and accessories that are great for gifts, all fully searchable and categorized for easy browsing. Woodsmithplans.com, everything you need for building fine woodworking projects.